Hey, how's it going everyone? My name is True Underdog, here today with a guide on how to play Dr. Fate. Now this guide has been a long time coming and I very much appreciate your patience. And in fact, I'm going to reward your patience with a much more thorough guide. A lot more casual, a lot more depth, just all around better. And hopefully more fun to watch as a result. So without any further ado, let's break this down step by step. Now first off we have a Monro Blast. Typical projectile hits mid and goes full screen. If you want to meter burn it, you get 3 projectiles. Now neither version is safe up close, so be careful when using it. However, they do hit mid, so they are great for keep away. However, even though they hit mid, I have seen people dodge them as long as they're up close. They can duck under them if they're near Dr. Fate. Basically, the closer they are to Dr. Fate, the easier they are to duck under. But if they're far away, they're forced to block this or jump over it. Now during Dr. Fate's trait, these do more damage. Both the regular and meter burn version do more damage. And they also stagger the opponent, right? So good stuff. Look at all that damage for just a projectile, that is pretty nuts. Next up we have the Displacer Orb. A slow moving projectile that you can actually dash in behind if you're far enough away. In fact, you can actually combo after it if you're fast. Look at that, 2 hits. I managed to do it. Now that being said, its main purpose is not for getting in, it's for keeping the opponent away. It's slower, harder to jump over, and when combined with your first projectile, very annoying to deal with, right? Try to jump over it, you get hit with the regular projectile, just a nuisance. Very annoying to deal with. But that's not all. Doing the input a second time and then meter burning will freeze it in place, and now the opponent has to deal with this, right? They have to either get over it or go through it or teleport behind it. They can no longer wait for it to pass under them, they have to get over it manually. In fact, a good trick is to force the opponent to fall on it by freezing it as they're jumping, and they'll actually land on it, because they're trying to go over it, but you freeze it under their feet and they fall on top of it. Very good stuff. You can also hit the opponent into it in theory, but it's not very likely to happen since it requires you to jump over it and then hit the opponent, which is a risk that Dr. Fate doesn't really want to take. Now if you activate trait, this projectile actually launches the opponent on hit. Pretty good stuff. You actually can combo after it too, it's not too difficult. You do have to be somewhat close to the opponent, but not too tricky to do. Especially when you keep in mind you can cancel into his trait during a combo, so pretty good for setups. I haven't seen any normals that have enough hits done to actually combo into it. Maybe the uppercut does. Yeah, the uppercut does. That's about it. Like his down 2 will combo into it. Not worth it, like for sure not worth it, but that is one option if you just want to combo into it. You absolutely have to. But I can't get any follow-ups really. I can do like forward 2 up 3, and that's about it. But the fun point is in the corner you can combo after it much easier, and even mid-screen it's not too hard to combo after as long as you have trait activated. Next up we have Breath of Life. Now this is actually a pretty interesting move. If I walk inside of it, I get plus 5 health for every second I'm in it, right? In fact, like every half second I get plus 5. Man, every quarter of a second. Very quickly I'm getting a lot of health back, right? And I can actually have 2 on screen at the same time, which is very useful since there are 2 versions. There's a forward version and a behind me version, right? And I can have access to health on both sides of my body now. Or I can double dip and put them both in the same spot. I cannot do more than 2 at a time. Keep that in mind. Here's where things get interesting though. If I meter burn it, it doubles how much health I get. Plus 10, plus 10, plus 10, plus 10. Pretty crazy stuff, right? And if I double dip, 2 meter burns on screen, plus 20. Oh my god, every second I'm getting plus 20. That's nuts. And it's actually way more than every second, right? And it stays on screen for longer. The meter burn version does in fact stay on screen for longer. I forgot to mention that. It's important to take note. Now during trait, this attack actually becomes much more useful. It no longer gives you health, but instead drains health from your opponent. Oh no, minus 6 every quarter of a second, that is nuts. And if I meter burn it, minus 12, look at that health just drain. That is scary stuff, right? And you actually can combo into this and force the opponent to deal with health loss on their wake up, which is very frustrating, especially in the corner. And once again, if you meter burn, twice as much damage is being done to the opponent, and if you double dipped, they'd be losing a lot of health very, very quickly. Now in theory that would be a bit tough to do. It would require dropping 2 combos to set it up, but at the same time Dr. Fate does have enough mix-ups to pull this off. Next up we have Glyph of Osiris. You see this move all the time to end combos, does good damage, and knocks the opponent away. Meter burn version puts the opponent at full screen and does more damage. However, things get really interesting during trait. So during trait, the meter burn actually knocks the opponent off the wall to extend combos. You can do a back 3, and then extend your combo for good damage. Scary stuff. I dropped it. It's been a while since I used Dr. Fate, but the point is very good damage with trait active. And as I mentioned earlier, you can actually cancel his combos into trait and keep the combo going. So I'm going to do 1-1 into trait, so 1-1-4. Then I'm going to do Glyph of Osiris meter burn while in the trait, and check this out. Totally comboed, right? Scary stuff. Good damage. Oh my god, he's almost at full screen too. I can do projectiles that do more damage because I'm in trait. Just scary stuff. So make sure to always keep in mind, Glyph of Osiris is a great combo extender if you're in trait. Next up we have Spell of Judgement. Now this move's a bit tough to explain, so please stay with me. You can do this move up to 3 times, and if you push down forward 3, it sends them at the opponent. Now these are actually unblockable and do track the opponent's location. With that said, the opponent can actually dodge them if they move too fast, or if you hit them and they go too fast, it'll miss sometimes. It's not 100% gonna lock on, although they are somewhat reliable. And keep in mind you don't need all 3, you can do 1 and then just send out 1. 12 points of damage, no big deal, right? If you want to send out 2, go ahead and do that as well, 24 points of damage, no big deal. However, as you saw earlier, if you send out all 3, there's actually a follow-up. Now this follow-up explosion is actually a mid, the opponent can block it, so it's not a great way to hit the opponent, but it is great for extending combos. So if I send out all 3, well, look at that, my opponent was stunned, and if I was fast enough, I can actually combo after with a forward 3. Now this can be a bit tricky to do, since you do have to send them out before you start the attack string. However, it's also a lot of good damage for no meter, so it's always a good idea to go for it. Now what about in trait, right? Trait seems to always mix things up, so what's the mix up here? So the first mix up is, they now hit mid. They're no longer unblockable and they're actually traps on the floor. If the opponent walks over them and they're not blocking, they will get hit. And it also juggles them as well, you may have noticed that. If I had been fast, I could have actually comboed after that, right? Boom, boom, got him. So it's good for starting off combos, right? Very dangerous stuff, and it does way more damage too. By default it's unblockable, but only does 12 points of damage. If I'm in trait, it's no longer unblockable, but does 73, right? Big difference. And if I stack all 3, I no longer get a follow-up, but I do get a combo that extends itself. So check this out, boink, boink, boink. 198 points of damage, almost 200, not bad, not bad. Now it's not a very good combo extender though, with that being said, right? I'm not even sure if you actually can combo into it that easy. I'm gonna go ahead and try here, but it's not the easiest thing for me to do. Yeah, see, it doesn't really extend the combos quite as well, at least not in the same situation, but it is good for setting traps on the floor, right? You can send it out, set a trap down, do your projectiles, keep the opponent at bay. It's very good for that. It's also good if you want to launch the opponent and then leave traps on the floor that they can't walk over. It's good for that as well. And while it does do more damage, it's not as easy to combo after in my opinion, so personally it's not my favorite thing to do when I have the trait active, but it's also a very good option if you want that damage and the opponent's near death. Now last but not least we have Sheridom's Lock. So what this does actually is the opponent can no longer use that interactable. Whatever interactable is nearby, they can still use the vine, and if I keep dashing they can still use the deer, you know, all that crazy stuff. However, if I meter burn, boom, everything becomes off limits. Look at this. He can't use any of them. However, I still can. Boink! That's one of the funny things about Dr. Fate. Now, I never see people actually use this during tournament, or at least not very often, but it's a good idea to keep in mind. Like, you could knock the opponent down with the combo and then cancel into it, and the opponent couldn't punish me for doing it, right? They couldn't actually hit me on their wake up. I did it in time, and now that becomes off limits. So if you're fighting on a map like Metropolis, this can be a really good idea because suddenly they can't throw stuff at you, especially if they're a power character. Now if they're a faster character like Green Arrow, not as much of a big deal. They can't escape the corner maybe. They're forced to deal with your pressure. That's some utilization of it. So in summary, it works really good on power characters, but not quite as good on agility characters. At least not in my opinion. Now during trait, I've noticed no real difference. I've noticed that the symbols look different and they're red, but I haven't noticed any change in the move's properties, and in fact the move list doesn't suggest that it changes while in trait either. So just keep that in mind. I don't think being in trait actually changes anything about Sheridom's Lock. Alrighty dogs, that is it for his special moves, so let's go ahead and move on to his attack strings. Now thankfully Dr. Fate doesn't have too many attack strings, so it's not too hard to break down. First off we have Tower of Fate. Starts off very quickly. Stop messaging me, dang it! Like I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, it starts off quickly and ends with an overhead. This overhead can be great for extending combos, bing bing bing, and if you have the 3 onks, then it's great for extending combos, right? Because you have time for it to actually follow up, then the forward 3, and you get a full combo. Hey, there we go, with Dr. Fate bread and butter. My fingers still remember, ho ho ho. But yeah, great for starting off combos, especially if you have the onks. Next up you have Guidance of Nabu. Very good for knocking the opponent full screen and starting off your keep away, right? Great for pestering the opponent. You can't cancel it into a special move, right? So it's not as good as the other one. But it is very good for launching the opponent full screen and playing your keep away game. Next up we have Binding Fate. This attack starts off mid, so the opponent can't duck under it, very good stuff, and has a low on the second hit, right? Very sneaky, especially if the opponent does not know Dr. Fate. And then it ends with a little launcher. And this launcher can in fact be followed up, if I remember correctly. Oh, it's hard to do though. Gotta be in the corner if you want to actually follow up after it. Now next up we have Time Immemorial. So I actually love this string because it ends with an overhead. So you have a mid, then a low, and then an overhead immediately after. But that's not why I like it. I like it because the final hit, the overhead, actually tracks the opponent's location. Boom, look at that. Crazy stuff, right? So you can do keep away, you're throwing out your projectiles, maybe you freeze this bad boy on screen, you start attacking them with stuff, and you go, I'm gonna go in, boom, for that overhead, get the final hit, win the match. It's great for that. It closes the distance. Now you're no longer playing keep away, you're playing mix-up land, right? Trying to attack the opponent and go for the combos. Next up we have Blood Price. So this attack string is great for ending combos, and it does not require you to do any special cancels afterward. Just do the string and you get a lot of damage. 167, that's fantastic. That does 169, right? That was a full attack string with a special move, and it still barely did as much damage as just the attack string itself. So this string is honestly great for ending combos, although it feels a bit weird on your fingers at first. Once you get it down, great for ending your combos. And last but not least, we have Solving the Mystery. This attack string is great for extending combos in the corner and also good for starting off combos as well. It's not the best at it, but it does scoot you forward. It's also a decent wake up too. I've fought players who wake up with this and then do the glyph. They don't just wake up glyph, they wake up this into glyph. Very, very sneaky stuff. So it may actually have some invincibility. If not, it's at least very fast, so it tends to beat the opponent. Alrighty dogs, that concludes the Dr. Fate guide. As always, there is a combo guide at the end with some bread and butter combos. If you're a Dr. Fate main and have any extra information to share, please post that in the comments below. I would love to hear about your tips, and I bet the viewers would as well. And while you're down there posting a comment, go ahead and leave a like too, especially if you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you want to support the channel and look good while doing it, please check out my t-shirts. If you want to support the channel more directly, please check out my Patreon. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, because there's content on this channel every single week. It's never a dull moment on Underdog Gaming, so make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.
Vengeance of Horus! Of Anubis! This is your fate. Vengeance of Horus!
Dr. Fate wins.